Greenspan also warned that federal government investments in the market could fall victim to political manipulation. The Clinton administration proposal to require pension funds to invest a portion of their assets in so-called socially responsible projects highlights the inherent dangers in putting Washington in charge of investing retirement funds. As the Clinton plan illustrates, politicians cannot be trusted to invest assets with the objective of maximizing wealth for investors, and cannot be trusted to refrain from dictating which hoops American companies must jump through in order to be on the receiving end of hundreds of billions of investment dollars. Letting the federal government invest in the stock market would allow a gradual government takeover of American businesses, as the growing trust funds assumed an ever larger ownership share in the private sector. It would be a statist's dream, a formula for the merging of big government and big business. The American public seems to recognize the dangers of government-directed investment. Former White House pollster Mark Penn found that 67% of registered voters and even 52% of Democrats favor personal investment accounts over government-managed investments. Chile and Britain provide illustrations of the superiority of free market performance and privatization. In Britain, more than 3/4 of British workers have chosen to be enrolled in private pension plans. Younger workers in private plans can now expect pensions that are double that of the state-run plan. In a nation faced with the demographic problem of a declining ratio of workers to retirees, British pension reforms have significantly reduced the long-term liabilities of the state pension system. In Chile, the retirement system was privatized in 1981. Today, over 90% of Chilean workers have switched out of the government-run system. In the late 1970s, there were virtually no savings in Chile. Today, the cumulative assets in retirement accounts total over 40% of the nation's gross domestic product. Today, the typical retired worker in Chile is receiving a yearly retirement income equal to nearly 80% of his average annual wage over the last 10 years of his working life. In terms of equity, it is the poorest in Chile who have been helped the most by privatization. Closer to home, municipal employees in 3 Texas counties voted in 1981 to opt out of Social Security, which became illegal in 1983, and invest in a private pension system. Today, with virtually the same payroll costs as Social Security, an employee of 40 years can receive an annuity that provides a retirement check 3 times greater than from Social Security. Today, after 7.5 decades of rising Social Security taxation, American workers are faced with the fact that there is simply no money in any retirement account for any of them. Instead, they have been handed a pile of IOUs with no guarantee that they will ever be replaced with cash. The Supreme Court has ruled that workers have no guarantees within the Social Security system and no legal claim to either their accrued contributions or their anticipated benefits. Perhaps the biggest misrepresentation is that the Social Security trust funds that represent actual resources to be used for future benefit payments. In reality, they are nothing more than a promise by the federal government to spend money expropriated from the paychecks of future workers. A young worker entering the Social Security system is gambling on what a future Congress and President will decide to do. Given the system's unfunded liability and the inevitable tax hikes and benefit cuts to come, the political risk of staying in Social Security far exceeds the market risk of private investment. Supporters of the present system argue that there are significant transition costs in moving to a privatized retirement system. They maintain that there is a moral obligation to pay benefits to today's recipients and to those nearing retirement. And payroll taxes diverted to private accounts would not be available to pay those benefits. In effect, today's workers would have the burden of simultaneously paying for 2 retirements, their own pre-funded plans and that of current pensioners. But while privatization entails a sizable transition cost, keeping the current system in place and putting it on a sound footing also involves large transition costs. The key issue is whether the price tag for moving to a private system is larger or smaller than the amount of money Congress would have to find in order to fulfill the promises of the current system. As it turns out, privatization is less expensive and would actually reduce the unfunded liability I mentioned earlier. While any transitional financing plan would probably involve some combination of debt transfers from general revenues and government asset sales, the present Social Security surplus offers a good place to start. One plan leaves the current system untouched while using the surplus to allow creation of individual retirement accounts. In another plan, workers would be allowed to shift 10% of their payroll taxes to personal retirement accounts. The transition costs would be financed by cutting federal spending by 5% across the board. Raising payroll taxes, okay, I'll have to continue next time I go around because I got a couple pages left. Thank you. I remember when I had my first year.
Step back, yeah.
I'm not ready for you yet.
Oh, that's all right. I'll introduce myself.
Whatever. I'd like to thank Brian for the very intellectual presentation. He has, by doing this, he has ruined the rest of my life.
Not yours.
As well as a lot of other people's. Okay. I hope our next speaker will make me feel better, even if what he says is not going to work, based on the idiots we have in Washington running our government. One would think if a young man of Brian's caliber could stand up here and tell us what is bad and what is good about various ways of taking care of ourselves when we reach a certain age, that the least Congress could do was learn the same thing. That's the least Congress could do. If Brian knows all of this, then why doesn't the government know it? I don't understand a lot of things, and I never will. And I'm just making a comment about that.
Are you introducing or debating?
Yes.
I'm commenting on the last speaker. At any rate, we now have our next speaker, and this has to do, of course, with John Burr, UWO Philosophy Department, and Candlelighter. John, good luck.
Thank you.